Okay, so welcome back, everybody. Share my screen real fast. And this week, we're going to start our series on Sefer Vayikra. And I'll write a little introduction. Usually, the name that we give a book in Chumash is simply the first word of the book. We call Breshit, Breshit. The topic of Breshit is more about God choosing a nation. It begins with creation, but the topic of the book is not Breshit, or the topic of what we call Sefer Shmot isn't Shmot. And basically, the names that we give the books are simply the names, or basically the first significant word in each book. But what I do want to talk about today is the word Vayikra, and maybe there's a deeper meaning of why the book is called Vayikra, and basically why that's the first line of the book. And I'm using this to explain why I'm calling this series on Sefer Vayikra a calling for holiness or readiness. You'll see what I mean. Holiness, you mean, obviously, we're talking about the idea of Kedusha. Readiness is going to be one of the things we want to develop. I'm going to use that word instead of Tara and Tuma. I don't like using the word purity or impurity for Tuma and Tara. We'll explain why. But what it means by a calling, I'll try to explain that today. So just to start the class off today, I want to have a little discussion on a couple of things, just for the fun of it, to see where everyone's holding. Everyone, I'm assuming, has read parts of Sefer Vayikra before. Maybe not the book cover to cover, but they've been to Shul, Parshat Shavua. They're familiar with the book. So based on what you remember, what line would you give? What half sentence, or just everyone in the chat? Because I'd rather you put in the chat. If you want, you can speak up. And just tell me what you would say the topic of Vayikra is, other than the word boring.
Korbanot.
Okay, korbanot, that was thinking. Anything other than korbanot?
There's a whole section on Chagim.
Okay, now someone tell me why that would be considered korbanot as well. Why you could be considered korbanot.
Because we do korbanot, we give korbanot on all the Chagim, there's specific korbanot.
Yeah. When we talk to Chagim, we talk about what korbanot we bring. In fact, it says to be crafted mishal Hashem in each one. How about all the laws of Tuma and Tara? Why would that fit into korbanot?
Yeah, because you have to be in a state of purity to give a korban. Exactly.
No, it's not about the korban, but you have to be toward the korban. And certain times when you become tamei, you have to bring korbanot, like after having a baby, a yoledet, or after tzarat, you have to bring a korban before you can return to the mikdash. So pretty much calling the book about korbanot makes a lot of sense. In fact, what did the rabbis call the book? Torah korbanot. That's the name in Chazal for the book, because that's the topic of the book. But do we find? Yeah, go ahead.
How did it get the name Torah Kohanim?
Actually, that's the name of the book in Chazal. It's Chazal called the book Torah Kohanim. There's there's Sipri on Torah Kohanim. Torah Kohanim is a name that Chazal give it. We call it Vayikra because our custom is to call the books by the first significant word in the book. But put it this way, the topic of the book is more about korbanot than Kedusha. The problem is there are other books that talk about korbanot. In Sefer Shmot, we had korbanot, I think we had some, at least with the Mishkan. We have korbanot in Bamidbar. Actually, we don't have in the Devarim, but that we'll see. Now, soon we'll talk about how it relates. Now, for the fun of it, tell me from what you remember. This weekend, you can write on the chat now if you want. Name me examples that we have of korbanot before Sefer Vayikra.
What was the question?
Anything you can think of. If you want, you can share in the chat or you can speak up. Where do we have korbanot in Chumash, starting with Sefer Breshit? Are there korbanot in Sefer Breshit?
Yeah, we just had that with Cain and Hevel.
Very good. Cain and Hevel. Probably you'd all agree on that. Anything after that?
Noach,
yeah.
Noach, that's right. He brings korbanot. That's pretty good. 7, I think close, at least the tahor animals. After that, anybody?
Well, before that, Adam and Eve are, in a sense, they sacrifice their purity.
Okay, but that's not a korban, and that's using the word sacrifice in the English term of the word.
That's true.
But korban usually means when you take something and you
right.
you give it to God.
I get it.
Okay.
Sure.
In Brit
so-
Ben Habetarim, is there
Okay, so
something?
there's cutting up of animals,
Yeah,
but-
not.
but it's not really called. Now, Chazal say these are the same animals that later become korbanot. Chazal
Mhm.
relate them to korbanot, but it's not a classic korban.
Not a korban.
What about
Yeah.
Cain and Hevel?
Yeah, they mentioned Cain and Hevel.
Carbon Pesach.
Wait, in the,
But you got cut off?
I don't know
Okay.
where the microphone is.
Here, I'm-
In the
Hey, go ahead.
Akita, when the Malach tells Abraham to stop, he then brings the ayil.
That's right. Okay, that's a korban. Okay,
Mhm.
that's classic. Anything else in Sefer Breshit?
A korban.
Yeah, any other korban?
I think Yaakov gave a korban at some point.
At what point?
Does Melchizedek do korbanot? I'm trying to remember.
Melchizedek brought Avram brought lechem and yain to Melchizedek. I don't think there were korbanot there. Good question, right? Any other korbanot? Did Yaakov and Lavan make a zevach on the mountain?
Yeah.
Was that a korban? Have to see. Maybe. Okay, I remember that. We'll see. That was a cookout. We'll see. What else is there? But that'll be important for later. Anything else in I don't think Yosef and his brothers. I mean, they shech the seir, don't they? But not, to dip the. Let's go. That's that'll be
It's a
important later.
different
Yeah, that's sacrificing your brother.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or your father. Okay. How about in Sefer Shmot? Any korbanot there?
Carbon Pesach.
That's right.
Mhm.
Okay. Anything else in Sefer Shmot?
All the
For the
Nisiim,
Mishkan.
the Nisiim from the Mishkan.
That's not in Shmot. That's in Bamidbar. Anything else in Shmot?
Well, again, you get to the Zevach, and was it a cookout or was it korbanot at Matan Torah or
At Har Sinai, yeah.
around?
I'm pretty sure that was for God. We'll see. Okay. And that Matan Torah, there's when they build, is there a korban tamid in the when they build the Mishkan? Of course there was. It's okay. That's in Parshat Tetzaveh. Remember? Zesher Takrib. We have the 7 days of Miluim. Now, ready for a big surprise, everybody? Okay. The word korban never appears in Shmot or Vayikra. I mean, in Breshit or Shmot. You can do a little word check. Korban is a korban, like the word korban. Nothing, the Olat Tamid is not called a korban. Korban Pesach is not called a korban in Sefer Shmot. Cain and Hevel don't bring korbanot. It doesn't say the word korban there. I hope you're all surprised. Right? You should be. It's rather mind-boggling. The first guess when we find the word korban for the first time. The opening line is Sefer Vayikra. The word korban for korbanot is really interesting because we don't have a parallel to that in any other religion. Because what's the source of the word korban?
Karov.
Karov, which means being close to God. Yeah. So that's the question. Are korbanot about a relationship with God, about a closeness to God? Or are they about, or basically we'll see, is God working for you or are you working for God? We're going to develop that theme over the year. We'll try to see. We have to see what's the essence of korbanot. Now, anyone know what was, those who were in shul this yesterday, what did Cain and Hevel bring?
Say it again.
Mincha.
They brought a mincha, that's right, which means some type of present. Yaakov sent a mincha to his brother Esav so he doesn't get killed. A mincha you send to appease somebody, or to get someone on your side, but you don't bring it to become close. So that's something interesting we have to see. And even in the 7 days of Miluim, the animals are not called, at Har Sinai, it's not called a korban. Noach brings olot, but it's not called a korban. We call it a korban, don't we? But ask almost anybody, almost no one you'll ask pays attention to that. But it's amazing, the word korban is never used beforehand. If someone can find it, please let me know. I even did a word search just to make sure. Okay. No, we won't explain why today, but we'll get there over the next couple of weeks. Now, so that was my opening discussion, and most important now, okay, we'll get you thinking in a minute. Wait a sec, that's the wrong page here. I go up. One word about my source sheets. I'll share the source sheet with you, but if in case you didn't catch on, I asked a lot of questions at the beginning of this year, and if I gave you the source sheet, you'd have all the answers. So I didn't want to, and want to have a discussion like we're in class. I'd rather people use chumashim, for checking sources, and the source sheet can be a review later on. But Melissa has a copy, she'll share it with you later. Okay. Now, so that was B. We have read korbanot, and when we found them, what was the purpose that we'll have to talk about. Now, anyone remember where we had the word Vayikra before in Chumash? Vayikra being someone calling upon someone else. Like God calls the Or Yom, but like as God.
Vayikra b'shem Hashem.
I know. Okay, that's Abram calling out about God. I'm talking about where has God called upon anybody? As God talks to people left and right. I mean, not left and right, but God talks plenty of times to people in Breshit and Shemot instead before Vayikra. But do you remember any time where the verb Vayikra is used for God calling someone? Think for a minute. Anything come to mind? Everyone think for a minute. What?
At the Akedah.
At the Akedah, okay, that's close. You know why? In the Akedah, it's Vayikra Malach Hashem. The Malach Hashem calls, not God, but his angel.
Hashem calls Adam.
Very good.
Gracious.
Yeah, what did he call Adam?
El Ha'adam.
And what did he say to him?
Ayaka.
It's really neat, isn't it? The very first time, in fact, I think I have the source right here. I think if it's here. Okay, but I'll show you in a minute. But in chapter 3, we'll see in a minute. The very first time God enters a dialogue with man, right? It's with Adam, and it's called Vayikra Hashem Elokim El Adam Vayomer Lo Ayaka. We read it yesterday. I wanted to tie this year into Parshat Shavua a little bit. But I think that's interesting. That's the very first time God and man have any type of dialogue. God speaks to man and tells him what he can eat, what he can't eat, and things like that. But the first dialogue is even commandments. He tells Adam, this you can eat, this you can't eat. But the first time there's a dialogue is with Vayikra. Anyone remember any other ones? Where God calls on anyone with the word Vayikra without doing a Google search? It's even hard to do a Google search because you can find every Vayikra, but there's words. If you search for the word Vayikra, you'll find lots of them. But you have to find Vayikra with God calling somebody. Anything comes to mind? Yeah?
What about, does Hashem call to Noah?
I didn't find one like that. Does God have a conversation with Noah? He tells him what to do, but there's no dialogue. He doesn't have to yell at him for anything. He doesn't do anything wrong. He's a tzaddik. But I'm pretty sure there's nothing by Noah. I'm pretty sure that's it for. We have the Akedah by Breshit, but I think that's it for Breshit. How about in Sefer Shemot? I got you thinking a little bit. Okay.
Maybe
We're gonna
with
find.
Moshe, but I would have to look. Maybe with Moshe at the bush.
Maybe with Moshe at the bush. Okay, that's a very. Tell me why you think that's a good guess. Because I think it's the first dialogue between God and Moshe, right?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure the burning bush is the first dialogue between God and Moshe. We'll see if maybe it's there. It could be. Where else would you expect to find it? Okay, oh, wait, Sam, I'm not looking at the chat. I'm sorry. Let me look at the chat real fast. Okay, it's not very good. I hear my call name. Wait a second. Wait a second. Let me do a quick little mute here. Someone's waiting in Kupat Cholim. 1 second. How do I mute everybody? Melissa, you got the mute or want me to do? I'll do it. 1 second.
I got it.
You got it? Okay, good. Okay, you got it? Okay, good. And I should still be on. Okay, that's good. I hear you call my name. Okay. Now, so let me, what do you call it? I'm going to share with you something really interesting now. Let's take a look where you have the word Vayikra and holiness. The whole goal here, I'm trying to give meaning to what we find, why the book begins with the word Vayikra. Okay. So the first calling, Bereshit chapter 3, as you noted, Vayishmu kol Hashem Elohim talech b'gan. Remember Adam and Chava hear God's voice in the gan, and they hide. Remember, because they're naked. And then Vayikra Hashem Elohim el Adam v'yomer lo ayeka. See the first time right there? The first dialogue between God and man. He asked man, we're out now. That's a terrible. Who can tell me why this is a bad translation? You see, everyone understand my question? This is just a side topic because I just noticed the English translation here. How would you translate this? What does God tell man? Okay, let me turn off this screen share for a minute so I can see people. Okay. Oh, no one has their cameras on. There's a couple of people. How would you translate ayeka? Put it this way: if God is asking man, where is he? What should men answer?
Physically where he is, but that's not
Good.
a physical
He doesn't.
question.
Yeah.
Ayek is not physically where you are.
And God knows where he is. And what's the word for where is something in Hebrew? If you're looking for your keys, wait, Eiffel. If you're looking for your, let's say you're looking for your brothers and they're supposed to be in Shechem and you can't find them. What would you ask some guy you bump into?
Eiffel.
Eiffel Himroim. Right? Now, how about if you're a teacher and there's a student missing in class, okay? And I want to know where they are. Right? Do I want to know where they are, or do I want to know why they're not in class? I said, where's Johnny today? I don't want to know where he is, but I want to know how come he's not in class. I'll give you a better example. Let's say you're walking for a cookout, okay? With your daddy, your son and father walking for a cookout together. And they have the coals and they have the fire, but there's no meat, okay? So you know what the son might ask his father? Hey, daddy, I got the charcoal and I got the wood and I got the fire. Where's the hot dogs? Okay. Who am I quoting?
Yitzchak.
That's right. Yeah. Aye is where. Why isn't something here? You understand the difference between Eifo and Aye? Aye is why isn't something here. So when God asks man, Ayeka, he doesn't want to know where he is. God knows where he is. He wants to know why he's hiding from God. Why aren't you here in Gan Eden where you're supposed to be? You're working for me. How come you're hiding from me? Because what does man answer? He explains why I'm hiding. Remember, he says, we went into hiding because we're naked. Then God asked him, how do you know you're naked? But ayeh this simply means not where. Let me give you the best example. If you were on this week, we didn't say it, but Avraham. Lama yomru goyim ayeh Elohehem. What's so bad if non-Jews want to know where God is? That's great. They're searching for God. What do they ask? What are we worried about? Lama yomru goyim ayeh Elohehem. Right? Why would the nation say, why isn't our God with us? If we're losing in battle and things are going bad for our country, nation would say, hey, where's your God? You pray to your God. How come he doesn't listen to your prayers? Why isn't your God with you? That's ayeh Elohim. So that's our strategy in davening. If you don't answer our prayers, other nations will say, what kind of lousy God do you have? Elohim. Okay, we got to turn off the. You got it, Melissa?
Yeah.
Okay. Just mute everybody. Okay, good. I hope that was clear. That was just interesting for the word ayeh. Now let's get back to our topic. I thought it was really the first Vayikra is man in Gan Eden.
So
Now-
I did find it with Moshe.
Okay,
It's
we're gonna get to Moshe in a
Derek.
second. Yeah, we're
Okay.
gonna get that right there in a second. Here we are. In chapter 3, so we have Vayikra. And then by the Akedah, someone mentioned, there it's Vayikra Malach Hashem. So that's a little bit different. But here at the burning bush, here we go. How do you like that? Just like you found. Okay.
Rav
But-
Menachem,
Yeah, go ahead.
do we have the word apho in Breshit or Shemot or anywhere in the Torah?
Yeah,
Is
sure. When Yosef's looking for his brothers, Ephahim Roim.
Oh, apho him
Ephahim Roim, right?
And is apho, there's a difference between a specific, okay, I think I get it.
No, it's AFO is where something is. If I'm looking for my keys, AFO. If I want to know why someone didn't come today, how come the rabbi's not in shul? I don't want to know where he is. How come he's not here? When I ask where's that, let's say Melissa wasn't there today. I say, hey, where's Melissa? I don't know what she is. How come she's not in the program today? Understand my point? When why something isn't here is ayeh. And why isn't something? If I had time, I'd teach you. That's why when the malachim come, when we say ayeh sar ishtecha, they don't want to know where she is. They think, they're afraid that she's not living with Avram anymore. How come she's not there? He says, oh no, she's home. She's just in the kitchen cooking. Because they have to. They don't want to know where she is because they want to know how come she's not there. Got my point? That's key to the story there. Anyway, let's get back to the burning bush. God appears to Moshe. Then Moshe sees the bush burning. God sees that he's inquisitive. And he answers Hineni. So that's the first calling at Har Sinai. Now, I want to continue that conversation a little bit between God and Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe gets a job at Har Sinai, doesn't he? So I'm skipping to the job he gets. First, God gives him information. I'm the God of Abraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, and I heard them cry, and I'm coming to save them. And then he tells Moshe, now you go. I'm sending you to Pharaoh. Take my people out of Egypt. Moshe asks, how can I take them out of Egypt? And then listen what happens. What's God's answer? And God tells Moshe, I'll be with you. Here's a sign, okay? And then, big argument what that means, but I'll follow Rashi for a minute. What's God saying? God tells Moshe asks, sort of, what's the purpose of Yetziat Mitzrayim? Where are we going? I'm commanding you, take my people out of Egypt. And Moshe wants to know, okay, and what do we do when we get out of it? Then what do we do? God says, when you come out of Egypt, I want you to serve me on this mountain. Got that? Which is Har Sinai. Har Zeh has to be Mount Sinai. Now, why did I bring that down? Because that's the next time we have Vayikra, and this is key. If you didn't follow anything till now, pay attention. Okay? This is the most important Vayikra. Everything else built up to this. Okay? The third month, the biggest event in Jewish history is Matan Torah. Agreed? The brit we make in Sinai. No, we arrive at Har Sinai in the third month. Remember, the third month we get to Egypt. We land in Refidim. Perak Yotet and Shmot, Pasuk Gimel. Take a quick look. Look at verse 5. Moshe Allah Elohim. Moshe goes up the mountain. Vayikra elav Hashem in Har Lemor Kotamar LeBeit Yaakov v'Tegevah. God calls upon Moshe Rabbeinu to call upon the people to make them that family proposition. Remember, Beit Yaakov, Bnei Yisrael. Look what I did for you. I brought you here. Okay? That's the proposition. In other words, the first time that God calls upon his people, when he called upon Moshe at Har Sinai, Vayikra. But Moshe's job was to take Am Yisrael out of Egypt and bring him to Mount Sinai to enter a covenant with God. And what happens now? When Moshe finally arrives at Har Sinai with the people, God calls upon Moshe Rabbeinu from the mountain. Tells him, here's what I want you to propose to the people of Israel. What we call this is the Brit Sinai, isn't it? This is a proposition that we say Naser v'nishma to. Look what I did for you. Now are you willing to obey me? Keep my Brit, Yushmartem et Briti. You'll be my tradition. Batem tulim mamlechet kohen kadosh. See the word kedusha there as well. Okay. These two psukim are probably the most important psukim in Chumash because they're defining our relationship with God. we have to be his covenantal partner. We have to be willing to obey him, keep to his covenant, and we'll be a nation representing God, a Goy Kadosh. And we answer that. And guess what? We answer that. We get the 10 Commandments, and we get Parshat Mishpatim. So I'll follow Ramban, but either way, there's a covenantal ceremony at Har Sinai in chapter 24. Remember, good old 24/7, we say Nasa v'Nishma. When that's over, Moshe goes up to get the rest of the Torah, to get the Luchot Even. Remember in chapter 24, verse 12? God tells Moshe, come up the mountain and be there, Vayesham, and I'll give you the Luchot Even. Remember the Luchot HaBrit, and the Torah and the Mitzvah, which God's writing to give them, to teach them. Moshe goes up the mountain to receive the Luchot, and hope you remember, these psukim are going to be key now. Vayishkon kvod Hashem al Har Sinai. God Shekhinah dwells on Har Sinai. The Anan covers Mount Sinai, like before. And then Moshe has to wait before he enters the cloud until God calls him up. And now in Pasuk Tet Zayin, everyone have it? Vayikra el Moshe b'yom hashvi mitoch Anan. God calls Moshe from the Anan, and God's glory is on the mountain. And then Vayavo Moshe b'toch Anan. Moshe goes into the cloud. Okay, I'm sorry, I just skipped something. Keep something away. Moshe goes by Moshe b'toch Anan. My mistake there. Moshe goes into the Anan, up the mountain. Moshe b'har b'gnar b'layla. And during those first 40 days and 40 nights, he receives almost the entire Torah. Correct? Those are that we have the word Vayikra twice in Matan Torah. But first, we had the burning bush when Moshe first arrives. For Am Yisrael, when they enter the Brit in Perek Yotet, and when they finalize the Brit in Perek Havdalah, when Moshe goes up to get the first Luchot. Now, what happened in the meantime? In the meantime, we sin with the golden calf. The Luchot are broken. We have to renegotiate a new covenant, the second Luchot, V'nei Torah Chamim. And then we need to do something for God to bring a Shekhinah back. Those of you who were in my class in Sefer Shemot, we spent about 2 months on that, didn't we? The story of the Mishkan and Chet HaEgel and the new covenant. And when the Shekhinah comes back 6 months later, 6 months after they start working on the Mishkan, it's time to put it together. After God says, I can forgive you, but you have to prove you're worthy of forgiveness. We want the Shekhinah to return. And that's going to be the end of Sefer Shemot. Now, I'm going to read these psukim again, and we're going to compare them. This was our last year in Sefer Shemot. I'm just going to review it. And remember, just pay attention. This is Shemot Chavdalad at Har Sinai. Moshe goes up the mountain. Remember, Vayam Moshe lahar v'chas Hanan. Kvod Hashem is on the mountain. And God calls Moshe from the cloud to come in the mountain.
Efo ata.
Okay. The people see God's glory. And Moshe comes in the Anan, and he's there for 40 days and 40 nights. Now, at the very end of Sefer Shemot, which I want to show you is you need to understand the opening line of Sefer Vayikra, you need to know the end of Sefer Shemot. Why? Because at the end of Sefer Shemot, what happens? Sorry. We just skipped all that. Here we go. At the end of Sefer Shemot, we build the Mishkan. Let's put it here. Moshe finishes the work, and this is a famous parallel Ramban makes a big deal about. Sure, you remember that? Just like at Har Sinai, the cloud covers the tent, the Mishkan that we just built, just like it covered Har Sinai, and Kvod Hashem is on the Mishkan. But Moshe couldn't go into the Ohel Moed because the Shekhinah was too intense, and Kvod Hashem was filled in the Mishkan. And then we're told when the Anan went up, we traveled. When the Anan didn't go up, we didn't travel. And the Anan followed us for the rest of our journey in the desert. Now, what we did, when we studied the end of Sefer Shemot, what did we do? We noticed the obvious parallel between Shemot 24 and Shemot 40. And just for those who weren't in that share, and for those who don't remember from 5 months ago, we did that back in June. But these were the concluding lines. No, chapter 40 is the concluding lines of Sefer Shemot. And we noticed how they're exactly parallel to Moshe going up for the first 40 days in Har Sinai. Let's just take a quick look and just to point everything out. Here we go. Remember, Vaychas Hanan et Tahar, and here we had Vaychas Hanan et Ohel Moed. We had a perfect parallel, right? V'chvod Hashem le'et HaMishkan, Vayishkod Kvod Hashem al Har Sinai. Okay, I can erase those because they're two. I have to make a thinner line later on. Those obviously parallel. And then Kvod Hashem is on Fold the Mishkan. But in contrast to, what do you call it? In contrast to the end of Parshat Mishpatim in Shmot, where Moshe goes up to the mountain, at the end of Sefer Shmot, Moshe can't go up the mountain, which sounds like a sort of a sad ending. But when we finish the parallel, what did we realize? That there's a parallel in Psukim Lamed Vav to Lamed Chet to take you right to Sefer Bamidbar about traveling with the Anan. And the parallel to Har Sinai should continue. It's just like beforehand, just like when Moshe goes up for the first 40 days, the cloud's covered, but Moshe had to wait for God to call him. And therefore, the pasuk that's missing, let me hear the circle it real fast. Okay. The pasuk that's missing in the end of Sefer Shmot is what we had here in the end of Parshat Mishpatim. In Mishpatim, when Moshe goes up for the first 40 days, he has to wait for God to call him. But if the Shekhinah is back on the Mishkan now, God should call Moshe to enter the Ohel Moed to talk to him. And that's exactly the first line of Sefer Vayikra, correct? And those who were in the show, you remember that? In other words, if I look at the parallel between Har Sinai, Shmot 24, where God called upon Moshe Rabbeinu to come up and get the laws, once the Shekhinah returns to the Mishkan, I should have the same thing happening once the Mishkan is built. And basically, I go from here, from Pasuk Lamed Hey, this takes me right to Sefer Vayikra. That was the line that's missing here. Vayikra Moshe, if I take that parallel, V'chasad O Moed, like the Har, Moshe can't go in because the Anan, Moshe can go either. He had to wait for 7 days, for 6 days. On the 7th day, God calls him. And here also, Vayikra Moshe, and God speaks him from the Moed. So I'm trying to show you, is the word Vayikra is very much connected to the Brit at Har Sinai. Got my point? Right? When God, it's not often when God calls upon Moshe, God calls upon man. It's the very first time that God has any conversation with man. And that's back in Gan Eden. We have it at the burning bush, where God's getting Moshe ready to take his job to bring Am Yisrael to Har Sinai. It comes first and primarily now when we enter the covenant of Har Sinai, and when Moshe goes up for the first 40 days to get the detailed covenant and the symbol of the covenant. Now, if you remember the famous Ramban, which we'll see soon, that's exactly Ramban's entire point, that what in essence is the Mishkan, it's a mini Har Sinai. Now, so that takes you right to the beginning, to verse 9 of Sefer Vayikra. Just a little finish up here. These psukim at the end of Sefer Shmot, when the Anan come up, they would travel. If they didn't travel, those psukim continue into, let me clear the drawings and go back to my mouse. Those psukim continue into Sefer Bamidbar, chapter 9. Remember? Yom Hakim Mishkan Lahanan, V'alotanan Yisu. We all did that before. So the Mishkan in Sefer Shmot, I'm sorry, we'll talk about the Mishkan Shmot, but Sefer Shmot ends with the Mishkan being built. And now in Sefer Vayikra, we can use it. But the big sign is now that God can talk to Moshe Rabbeinu from the Ohel Moed. No, it's now we've fixed the sin of Chet HaEgel. No, God's Shekhinah has returned, where it's people again, the covenant is back on its feet. And now God can continue giving laws to Moshe Rabbeinu to teach the people. The question is going to be, why is the very first law about korbanot? Now, one basic difference between Shmot and Vayikra is basically how to build it, how to use it. But we'll get to that soon. And basically, this transition we have from Shmot to the other books is now that Shekhinah is back. In Vayikra, we have laws relating to God's presence. We'll call it Kedusha. Bamidbar, you travel with the Shekhinah. And the will be laws from Brit Sinai that Moshe went up to get in the first 40 days. Now, before I go into the beginning of Vayikra, I want to share with you something which I think is really interesting. Moshe Rabbeinu received a set of laws, remember, on the first 40 days in Har Sinai? Those laws he taught over and over again. It's called Mishneh Torah. Those are laws that Moshe teaches for the last time in Sefer Devarim. Sefer Devarim, Moshe gives a speech. I'm assuming you're familiar with. Moshe's speech goes from chapter 25 to 26. And in the beginning of the speech, he says, The laws I'm giving you were laws that God gave me back at Har Sinai in the first 40 days. So when Moshe now, in the 40th year, is giving his final speech and commandment to the Jewish people, what does he do? He learned from his Rebbe. He gathers the nation together, and what does he do? Vayikra Moshe kol Yisrael v'yomer alehem. Moshe calls upon them. Moshe starts speaking here in chapter 5, verse 1, and continues speaking till the end of chapter 26, and gives them all the laws. And what's his first line? Listen, Shema Yisrael, to all the laws I'm teaching you today. Learn them and keep them. And these laws are part of the Brit. Hashem Elokeinu krantim under Brit b'chorev. That Brit in Chorev, how did that begin? With the burning bush. Vayikra Moshe mitoch hasneh, that was in Chorev. And at Har Sinai, when they returned as a nation after coming out of Egypt, Vayikra Moshe, remember, look what I did for you. Now, Moshe does this, he finishes the speech. And then when the speech is over, he calls upon the nation one more time to make the final Brit, which will be called Brit Nisavim. And that's in chapter 29. See the same thing? Vayikra Moshe kol Yisrael v'yomer alehem. And this is just like Har Sinai, isn't it? Remember, God called upon Moshe, Atem ritem asher asiti l'Mitzrayim. Now, Moshe tells people, you saw what God did for you coming out of Egypt. Okay? Look what I did for you. And now he's adding the 40 years in the desert that happened. And now I just wanted to just show you the parallel again to what we had before. Look at the format that we had in the first Vayikra, in chapter 19. Okay, Moshe goes up to God. God calls Moshe from that and tells him, tell this to the people of Israel. Look what I did for you. Look, I took how I took you out of Egypt. And now do you want to be my covenantal partner? To be my skula. And now in the 40th year, Moshe, speaking on behalf of God, tells the people what? Take a look again. Brit Nisavim. Sorry. What does he tell the people? Let me go back up. Here. Moshe calls all of Israel and tells them, and that's how he begins his speech in chapter 5 through 26. And now in Brit Nisavim, again, Moshe calls the people and tells them, again, Atem ritem, look what God did to you, look how he took you out of Egypt, and all the things he did in the desert for 40 years. And now, just like before, Ushmartem et divrei habrit hazot, vasitem otam leman taskilu, and then Atem notzim achem kochem lifnei Hashem Elohechem, Mosheichem shiftechem, tatat labracha b'brit Hashem uvelato. To re-enter this brit, now it's the 40th year, you're about to go into Israel. Leman hakim otcha lo la'am v'yilachem kasher libech v'shir b'alavotach l'amar b'tzat v'Yaakov. And now the brit's going to become eternal. That's only with you, this brit, it's for all generations. So just like we had Vayikra twice or 3 times in Sefer Shemot, God calling upon Moshe Rabbeinu in every key event at Har Sinai, Moshe Rabbeinu now, in his final year, passing on the Torah to Am Yisrael, uses the word Vayikra when he calls upon them. So if I wanted to summarize, the word Vayikra I think is significant. Got that? So it's the fact that the word Vayikra opens up the book is echoing Mount Sinai, and I'm making such a big deal about it simply to support the famous Ramban, which would be key to understanding why a korban is called a korban from Lashon Karov. Let's take a look. Where are we? I get wrong thing here. What do we have? Where is the famous Ramban? Ramban in the beginning of Sefer, at the beginning of Parshat Truma, where he talks about the Mishkan being a eternal reminder of Brit Sinai. He says, the Stoda Mishkan. Remember, the Ramban is a Kabbalist. So what's the secret? What's the depth of the Mishkan? What's it about? Shia Kavod Shaya Shachan al Har Sinai Shochen Elav Benistar. Remember, Har Sinai, Hashem was Nigla. Everyone could see God. His presence was felt. The same Shekhinah that everyone witnessed and felt at Har Sinai, we never leave Har Sinai, we take it with us. But it's going to dwell in a hidden manner in the Mishkan. Okay? And what Psukim does he quote? What we said at the end of Perach Avdalad, Mishpatim Bashkom Kacham Har Sinai, just like it says in Devarim, and just like it says in the end of Shmot. Okay? Mishkan, the same parallel we saw. וכבזכיר במשכן 2 פעמים, כבוד השם מלא את המשכן. Okay. Okay, and now listen what he says. Okay. והיה במשכן תמיד עם ישראל הכבוד שנרד לה בהר סיני. And he brings psukim to prove it. Now, why is that important for us? Let me stop the share for a minute. If the Mishkan, if the purpose of the Mishkan is not a place to feed God, but a place when you come to the Mishkan to remember your connection to God and your covenantal commitment to be God's people, then the Mishkan is a calling. Got my point? That's what I'm saying by separate as a calling, when you're being called upon. It means you're called upon because you have a job to do. Now, the key event in Chumash is when Am Yisrael takes upon itself to be a nation in the service of God. We represent God as a people. Now, I need a reminder of my covenantal purpose. I need a reminder of what the purpose of my life is and how I spend my life in the service of God. And as I'm working for God, we're in a partnership with God, I need constant reminders of the essence of my partnership. And therefore, visiting the Mishkan is like revisiting Mount Sinai and making that commitment. So when I want to do something symbolic to remember my commitment to be a member of God's nation, my commitment to serve God in my day-to-day life, I need on a regular basis a visit, right, to remember who my boss is and my relationship with my boss. We want to go out to eat together, to see one another, the visit to the Mishkan has to be is revisiting Har Sinai and the commitment of Har Sinai. Now, it's super important because the Mishkan is going to turn into the shul, the Mikdash Ma'at, and the korbanot are going to be replaced by tefillah. So whatever meaning I can find in korbanot and Mishkan, I can transfer that now to what it means to come to shul and daven and pray. That's why it's so key. And even though we don't bring korbanot today, the core idea behind the korban and the word korov, of closest to God, and the need for korbanot is going to be replaced and be understood much better in what tefillah is about.
Rabbi
That
Leibtag,
question? Yeah, sure.
I just was looking, I went back to the Akedah,
Mhm.
and actually, I think the fact that Vayikra is, even though it's the Malach, it's absolutely an affirmation of the Brit.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
Abraham was tested. He was about to do what Hashem wanted him to do.
Mhm.
And he then, when the Malach stops him, he doesn't just say, oh, okay, thank you. He brings a korban.
That's going to be the paradigm for what a korban is.
It really, and
Yeah,
the fact that
yeah,
it's on
yeah.
Har HaMoriah.
It's on Har Moriah, which later becomes Har Sinai. Hamakom Hashiv Har Hashem. Exactly.
So in the beginning, we were disturbed by the fact that
Yeah.
it was Malach, but it's really, it's the essence of what everything you just
Yeah.
said.
Yeah. And on top of that, that's the first time we have the Shvuah. Right? Binishvatinu Hashem, the Shvuah and the Har Hashem, the Shvuah that makes the Brit irreversible. Now we might be in trouble, but that's going to be the importance of the Akedah. In fact, that's why in all the Yom Tovim, we always bring in Ayo L'Olah. Remember, if Yom Tovim is our routine checkup with God, we'll see that topic when we see the korbanot and their meaning. But if our routine checkup, I have to bring in Ayo L'Olah, just like I bring the Sir L'Chatat to remember the sin of Yosef and his brothers in Shuvah, I need to bring the Ayo L'Olah to remember that. Okay. So in a nutshell, I'm trying to explain why I think it's really significant that the book of Vayikra begins with the word Vayikra, because the word Vayikra resonates Mount Sinai, and that's Mount Sinai, the commitment that God's calling upon us to be his people. And Moshe took that same idea that he learned from God. Remember, God called upon him to begin his job. It was his shlichut, to take Am Yisrael out of Egypt and bring him to Har Sinai. When we get to Har Sinai again, God calls upon him to deliver. Remember, God's calling upon Moshe the burning bush, lead the Jewish people. And in Parsha Yitro and Perek Yotet, God calls upon Moshe Rabbeinu to call upon the people, center of the Brit, remember, to deliver Kol Tamar the Beit HaKop to Gizon Yisrael. And then when Moshe on behalf of Am Yisrael is going up to get the Luchot HaBrit themselves, the symbol, and all the detailed laws. Again, God calls upon Moshe Rabbeinu. And then Moshe Rabbeinu himself, when he has to deliver this to the Jewish people, the new generation in the 40th year, and brings it to Brit Nisavim, again, Moshe calls upon the people with this challenge and makes it and calls upon them when they enter the Brit in Brit Nisavim, which is the Brit on all generations. And therefore, I hope I got my point across, why I'm calling the book a calling. Not just a calling, but a calling. We're talking about the key topic of Torah and Judaism, the understanding, the deeper understanding. It's called Kabbalat Malchut Shamayim, that as a Jew, you're called upon to be in the service of God. Now, why is that critical when it comes to idol worship? I know it sounds like a cliche, but the big question in religion, are you working for God or is God working for you? Now, in classic idol worship, there's many gods. It's going back to Parshat Breshit. And there's many powers. Remember, there's the rain god and the sun god and the moon god and the fertility gods and the grain. There's every power in nature that man needs for survival. Ancient man saw as a god, and to placate those gods, they fed them. But the reason why people brought sacrifices in ancient times, right, wasn't to build a religion, was to get God on their side. The same thing we do with people we need to help them. We take them out to lunch, we say nice things to them. Our goal, the only relation in idol worship, the only reason you have a relationship with the God is because you want something from that God. You need those powers to help you survive. Now, in Chumash, we take that whole idea and flip it around. Gods aren't working for man. Man is working for God. And there's a purpose in creation, and man has a calling to act properly, to build a just society. And that's how he serves God. And if he's going to bring a sacrifice, it's not to get God to give him rain. It's in order to remember that if God will bless him with rain, it's based on his deeds, not based on his sacrifices. Because when we see in depth what sacrifice is about, you don't bring a sacrifice to get something out of God. You bring a sacrifice to remember your relationship with God, to have a closeness to God. And to remember the Sinai experience and the Sinai commitment, that's why we bring a korban. And next week we won't have time to spend time, we'll talk about the idea of reach nichoach, which is, we'll get that in chapter 1 in Sefer Vayikra, and we'll see how it relates back to Sefer Breshit as well. So today I was doing a little bit of relating to Parshat Breshit. You catch on to that? We did God calling upon Moshe and God in Gan Eden and stuff. And next week we'll see how the flood will help us understand this, because the flood relates to Sinai as well. So that was my word of it. That was my explanation for the calling. Now I get the second part, whether it's holiness or readiness. So let me just give a quick little, let me share my screen here and give you a quick little summary of Sefer Vayikra, of an outline summary, a little outline of Sefer Vayikra, what the topics are going to be. This I'm assuming you're familiar with, but just to make it straight. The first 3 chapters of Vayikra, there's a basic outline of Sefer Vayikra. You see my screen, okay? Now that we built the Mishkan, man can come close to God. We'll talk about later why you might think that he can't bring close to God. Maybe God will bring a Shekhinah back, but not every individual can't get that close. Maybe it's only for priests and things like that. So God's saying man can come close to God, and you can bring a voluntary offering. The first 3 chapters, you can bring a mandatory, and sometimes you have to sometimes you must bring an offering, korban chova. We'll deal with this in detail. And then we have how to bring korbanot. But the first 7 chapters deals with what you guys called korbanot, which actually Vayikra calls korbanot. We have to do them in detail. That'll be one major topic. Okay. Then we have the story of dedicating the Mishkan, which really belongs to Sefer Shemot. It began in Sefer Shemot. What's it doing in Vayikra? That'll be our discussion of chapters 8, 9, and 10, and the narrative about Nadav and Avihu. Okay. After the incident with Nadav and Avihu and making a mistake and not approaching God the right way, we have 5 chapters that talk about when you temporarily can't come to visit God, or what's called becoming, what you guys call becoming tameh. What causes tumah and how do you get rid of tumah? And that'll begin with tumat from touching dead bodies, or I'm sorry, tumat from touching dead animals. It's called tuma 1 day tuma, then 7 day tuma from yoledet and sarat and things like that. And then we'll talk about when you do enter, when you can come, like entering the whole, that's Yom Kippur. And then we'll see what chapter 17 is about. It's about respecting the temple and not bringing sacrifices in other places. Then there's a transition in chapter 18, where we no longer focus on the temple itself, but rather outside the temple. And we have what's called the Areot in chapter 18. We have a whole section about man being kadosh. And therefore, what he shouldn't do in chapter 18, what he should do in chapter 19, Kedoshim to you. Again, laws of Areot in chapter 20. And then special laws for Kohanim in chapters 21, 22 in Parshat Emor. Then we have Kedusha in the realm of time, the holidays people mentioned before, and daily and weekly symbols. We'll talk about this, the Lechem HaPanim, and the and laying the menorah. And then we have Kedusha in the realm of space, Shemitah, and Yovel, etc. And then blessings and curses on the covenant, which you have to talk about. That's the end of the book. And then the epilogue in chapter 27, we'll have to deal with that also, about Erchin, where man sort of offers himself or gives his own value. But what we're going to try and do is try to figure out what's going on. Like what laws, there's laws about korban in other books as well, but what's going to be the theme, or what's going to tie all the laws in Sefer Vayikra together? There's no doubt, unlike any other book, the book is primarily law, very little narrative, primarily law, and it's organized not in chronological order, but rather in thematic order or topical order. And the order, probably better than almost any other book, the order is probably like flows very logically. There's a couple of little things out of place here and there that we have to deal with. But it's now what I want to end with, I have to end a little bit early today. I'm actually in California now, so it's 2 a.m. So I gotta actually get up early in the morning also. But what I want to finish with today in this introduction is the rest of my title, holiness or readiness. Now, if you do anything academic, I hate playing with the alphabet, but in academia they love to divide Sefer Vayikra into P and H. Anyone ever hear that? The priestly code and the holiness code. Now they're onto something. We're going to we'll follow we'll see. We'll do a very similar analysis, but we're going to reach a very different conclusion. But they see the first 18 chapters of the book talking about laws of priests, sacrifices, Tuma and Tara. Very almost no kedusha. The word kedusha is I think one time, which they claim doesn't belong there. And then starting with Kedoshim to you, chapter 19, the word kadosh is everywhere. We have kedusha everywhere you turn.
Rav
Now,
Leibtag, who's they?
yeah? Who's they? They should not be mentioned. I call the Bible critics. And anyone who studies the book academically. Now, let me just share with you why I'm doing this, because I hold, as students of Chumash, you have to do objective analysis. In other words, you have to analyze the book and follow patterns in there. And the academia people, right? They do the objective analysis. Their interpretation we disagree with. They don't begin with the assumption it's divine. They begin with something that's man-made, and they see there's different strands, and it must be the reason for the different strands are different authors, like Shem Yud Kei Vav Kei and Shem Elokim and Breshit. With their alphabet, that's J and E or something like that. But they keep on changing their mind all the time. There's no doubt when you objectively study the Bible, you'll notice that. You can't miss it. But Chumash does it on purpose to teach you something deep. There's a deep meaning in that. And that's my other title. Is it a book about a calling for holiness and readiness? Now, readiness means if you have a calling to do a job, you have to be ready for your job. And we have to see how the ideas of Tuma and Tara relate to that. In other words, how offering a korban should affect you, not God. That's the main thing we have to explain. What's the effect of the korban on the person? It's not how you get God on your side. It's everything's happening is going to be the exact opposite of idol worship. What's understood in depth. And the coolest part is why this transition to kedusha. Now, I want to, again, we're not going to explain everything now. I'm just giving introduction that we have to talk about holiness, which doesn't mean holy. Okay, Dusha means to separate, to be separated. And when the rabbis call the book Torah Kohanim, there's going to be one of two reasons. The simple reason is why it's laws for who? For priests to work in the temple. But when you follow the theme of Kedusha that we saw today, remember? If the purpose of coming to the Mikdash is to remember that you were chosen to be a Goy Kadosh, but to be Kadoshim tu ki Kadosh ani Hashem Elokechem, then the Torah Kohanim is not just how a priest serves God in the temple, but we're coming to the temple, right, to come close to God, to remember how we, as a Mamlechet Kohanim, as a nation separated from the other 70 nations to serve God, how we have to approach our job. So when Chazal called the book Torah Kohanim, it has a very deep double meaning, because it's an instruction book at the simple level for priests about what work they do in the temple, how to bring sacrifices. You know, it's laws that priests need to know to get their job done. It's a handbook for the priests. But when you look at it much more in depth, it's more of a handbook and a guidebook for a nation of priests. And a Goy Kadosh is not just a nation to bring sacrifices. A nation brings sacrifices to remember how they have to behave outside the temple in their day-to-day life. And that's why we're going to find what they call P and H. We call in the temple, and outside the temple, we call emanation. And in order for our services in the temple to have an effect on our life outside the temple, okay, so I need that transition. They pick up on the transition, but they're missing the whole point of the transition. It's like, why do you go to shul? You go to shul to leave shul. Now, if shul is right, when you come to daven or meet in a big knesset, the idea is, how does that get to influence how you act in your day-to-day life outside the big knesset? The same way, when you come to bring a korban to God, when you come to the temple and you interact with God in the temple, that has to have a transformative effect on how you behave once you leave the temple. And if it doesn't, you haven't accomplished anything. So therefore, the Torah Kohanim relates to a Mamlechet Kohanim V'Goy Kadosh, of how a nation of priests have to act and behave. So that was my introduction. Next week, we're going to talk about Perek Aleph. We're going to deal with Perek Aleph itself. And that's the word korban. What's this idea of a korban? We'll trace the concept of a korban olah. Then we can go back to notes. The first one to bring an olah will be Noach. Remember you mentioned which korban in Breshit. So kind of Hebel bring a mincha. Unclear why, but that's a topic for you in Sefer Breshit. But the first one to bring an olah will be Noach. And behind the story of the flood is going to be key, in my opinion, to now I need the story of the flood to understand korbanot. In my opinion, the story of the flood was written to understand korbanot. But that we'll have to explain next week. I hope you see where I'm going.
Is the mincha offering flour?
No. A mincha can be a present.
It's just that a time, a specific time of day.
Yeah. There's specifically, no. Mincha is a time of day, that's something else. That's why we call a mincha means a present, like an offering. Like what does Moshe tell God? Al tefen minchatam, or Yaakov sends a mincha le'esav achicha. Now, technically speaking, usually a mincha is a flour offering. But it can have a specific meaning, it can have a general meaning. There's a lot of words like that. Mishkan specifically means the covering over the tabernacle, but later it means the entire edifice of the tabernacle. Lechem can mean bread, lechem can mean food. We'll see. Many words have a single meaning and a general meaning. So mincha can mean a flour offering. It can also mean any type of present. But I mean, when Yaakov sends a mincha, you know what I'm talking about? When he sends I'll open up my chumash real fast. I have 2 more minutes. Let me share my screen real fast. Open up the chumash. Anyone remember where that is? What was in the chat real fast? Okay. That's a thing song. Never mind. 1 second. We want to open up Sefer Vayikra, I said, right? No, Sefer Breshit. Oh, let me find Breshit. What parsha is that? That's going to be Parshat Vayishlach, right? It's got to be Parshat Vayishlach. That's going to be chapter, someone help me out. Chapter 32, maybe? Let's try that. No, that's chapter 33 now. Okay. Here. No, it was right. That's right beforehand. So it is 32. Okay. Yeah. That is Vayishlach. It says to start with Pasuk Aleph. Okay, chapter division mistake. So what happens? Here. Here. Okay. Vayalan Shabbat Lailahu. We're talking about Yaakov. Vayikach min abab yadom mincha lesebachiv. Now he's not setting in flour, is he? Izi matayim tiyashim esrim rechidim matayim. That's a lot of animals, isn't it? But it's called a mincha. So so there's no doubt here. Mincha doesn't mean a flower offering; it means a present. What's it say in English here? A present. It actually says the word present. It's got the English right. But later on, the mincha can also mean a flower offering. And the idea that when we study chapter 2, we'll see why it's so important that that dafka flower offering is called the present, the mincha. Okay. Any other questions on what we did today, or in general what we do? So so Melissa's going to share the source sheet with it. I think maybe she put up the link already. You have all the sources on there. Okay.
Put it up now.
Okay. And there was one other question I had. So we're going to do basically, I'll try more or less to go in order through the book. We have to pace ourselves. And when there's times of year that that relate to the calendar, we might change the order. Like Hanukkah time, I might do something that relates in Sefer Vayikra Dafka to Hanukkah, because Hanukkah and the Kohanim sort of go hand in hand. In case you didn't notice, and the Mishkan and.
Thank you,
Hanukkah
Rabbi
Tabayit.
from Jerusalem.
Okay, thank you, everybody, and everyone have a Shana Tova. It's been a couple months since we had class, so and we'll be in. We'll see you in Hashem next week.
Yes,
Okay.
Thank you, Rabbi.
And Bechirot Tovot.